I'm finally done, everyone. I finished my second novel, Board Games 2, the sequel to my first novel, Board Games, published in 2018. And we have a special perk for all the loyal subscribers to SoCHiology and Mogul Motivation. Go to TrueStoriesMedia.com and check out Board Games 2 and or Board Games if you haven't read the first installment, and type in BG2 TRUE as the promo code. That's the letters BG, the numerical number 2, TRUE, and you will receive 10% off your order. Board Games 2 will be available worldwide October 4th, so don't forget to get your pre-order in ASAP because it ends September 3rd. BG2 TRUE, the promo code for Board Games 2. You are now tuned into the SoCHiology podcast. SoCHiology is a lifestyle brand that analyzes Chicago culture and connected topics abroad, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. The southside of Chicago is controlled by numbered streets. The lower the number, the further north you are, and the closer to downtown you are. For example, 8th Street. The higher the number, the further south you are, and the further away from downtown you are. Like 95th Street, you're nowhere near downtown. Within all of that geographical area, you have a portion called the low end, and that's what we're going to talk about this week on SoCHiology. Where does the low end begin? Where does it end? What was the culture like on the low end? And how the low end is drastically changing from what we used to know in the past to what it is now and going forward in the future due to gentrification and other high-end developments. So without further ado. So in y'all opinion, where does the low end begin?
I believe it begins where the Ickies are, which was what, 22nd and State, if I'm not mistaken?
Something like that, yeah.
I would say it begins right there because you can't leave the low end. You can't leave the Ickies out of the low ends, first of all.
Right.
Part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You agree, Tom?
I definitely agree that it starts there. We always had a saying. It was always like 47 to 22nd, stay to the lake.
Yep, exactly.
So it goes as far north as 22nd, as far south as 47th,
Mm-hmm.
and then it goes as far west as State, and as far east as Lake. That whole little bracket is the low end right there.
Yep.
Right.
Okay. So I can't say I'm from like 39th from Princeton and claim the low end.
I think you're just a slight bit out of the territory.
just a little bit out of there, just a little bit too a bridge too far. Okay. So within that little bracket, obviously Bronzeville takes up a lot of that. Bronzeville takes up a lot of that. So like let's just work our way from the south end. So we talking 47. So Tone, where'd you grow up at?
I grew up on 50th and Woodlawn, which is basically right at the cusp. I kind of grew up in the area where the bigger houses, the change, the shift from, what we considered the low end to High Park. Mm-hmm. So I've had the argument plenty of times. Man, you grew up in High Park, you didn't grow up in the low end.
Oh.
I mean, it all depends on, who you talking to and where they were.
Mm-hmm.
So
they were trying to say like you was like one of the middle class Negroes. That's what they were trying to say or something.
Yeah,
not saying you weren't from
yeah.
the low end. Like they were trying to say, no, you ain't one of us. You know what I'm saying? But like, why does it fucking matter though? Like, we still in the fucking south side of the hood.
Exactly. So I got it on both ends. Like I admit, I did have a Russian neighbor. But,
oh shit!
Right, but at the same time, it was like I'm still crossing this line to go to school every day, like from second grade to I want to say all the way through high school. Yeah, all the way through high school, and then on past that, I actually moved back there after, I graduated from college and everything. I came back.
Right,
but. Yeah, man, I crossed that line every day of my life.
And where'd you go to school at?
I went to Martin Luther King College Preparatory.
Okay. And was that your neighborhood school or was it Kenwood?
It was Kenwood. And I mean, I went to my grammar school was literally a stone's throw away from Kenwood. My middle school was a stone's throw away from Kenwood, but Kenwood just wasn't for me. You know, it was the ball program at the time, though. You know.
Hey, I love how you said the full name of King. You ain't just say you went to King. You said the full name. You had to let it be known. Like that's my school.
Yeah, you know, KING. We all we got, baby.
Okay, so all right, so you grew up on the cusp of the low end. So so we're gonna revisit that. Ma'am, tell us where you went to school.
I went to school at Dunbar Vocational Career Academy.
Oh, I love these four names. Like I love the pride and joy in these CPS schools right now.
Yes, one of the best schools in the city, if you ask me. One of the schools that's still standing. Like Dunbar pride is unmatched.
I'm gonna let that one go ahead.
Dunbar was cracking. I mean, we were the only schools at the time that did not wear uniform. That was a big deal for us. Like, so we were big on fashion. We had some of the best workshops in the city.
That's true.
Compared, like our biggest competition was a school all the way like Simeon, honestly, because they were also a vocational school.
Yeah.
But yeah,
and y'all got a lot of history at Dunbar too. A lot of history, a lot of famous alumni.
Absolutely. Jennifer Hudson was a big attendee. And then Jennifer Hudson, actually, her aunt who trained her in vocal lessons was my music teacher as well.
Really?
And she bragged on her a lot. We heard a lot of Jennifer Hudson history throughout the school. And Dunbar Pride is just unmatched. I mean, how many schools you know that hold a like 5-block parade during their homecoming?
That is true.
Yeah. We ain't talking about the bud either.
Right.
Exactly.
You know, I can say that, you know, I commend Dunbar as one of our rivals and also one of the schools we were at a lot, you know, being not too far down the street. We were there for football camps. The coach there is phenomenal, or he former coach. I don't think he's still there, but
I'm not sure. I believe you're speaking of Coach Pat.
Right.
Yeah,
I don't know who Coach Pat is, but shout out to Coach Pat though.
Yeah, you know, I took driver's ed there. You know, I was there a lot, and it was a dope school. It was
just not as dope as King though, huh?
At all. Couldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole.
Oh, damn. Damn, okay.
I had to throw that in there. I'm sorry.
He said, I'm sorry. But yeah, you know, I think Mr. T went to Dunbar. Am I correct? Mr. T?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken. So.
Yeah, Mr. T went there. Lou Rawls. You know, yeah, y'all got a lot of y'all got a lot of famous alumni down there. So since you went to Dunbar, you was like on the low end. You know what I'm saying?
30th.
Yeah, so tell us about some of your. Let's start out with like your adventure going to school, because you said you grew up in Inglewood, right?
Yes, I grew up on 59th and Laughlin.
Yeah, you're a long way from Dunbar.
Well, not really. You know,
not a long way, but you ain't around the corner either.
Eventually, it's a straight shot. Yeah.
Yeah, once you get to King Drive, it's straight shot down. But the commute wasn't that bad. Because you know why? Because I got to pass a lot of other schools on my way, and it's just like you got to see the comparisons along the way, and it's just like. So on the King Drive bus, we used to pass up the King kids when you get to 51st, and then you pass up the 47th. What was the who was on 47? I forgot at the time. Then of course, our biggest rival, our enemies, our arch enemies were Phillips at the time. Yep. Yeah. Those Phillips versus Dunbar fights were
crazy.
Historical.
Crazy.
Tell us about a Phillips Dunbar fight that you witnessed on the low end.
Oh, you know what? It got to the point where the police had to stand on 35th and King Drive. So 35th and King Drive was the battle zone.
Right.
Yeah. Like, because we traveled from 30th and they would travel from 39th. It was literally an even shot between both schools. So 35th was the meeting zone. Like, if you had a beef, if you had a problem, meet it on 35th.
That's where you met at.
Yeah, that's what you met at, and that's where everyone boxed it out at. And you know, there is not one specific occurrence that I can speak on, because it happened almost every day. That was the one thing you look forward to. It got so
You
bad.
look forward to it.
No, seriously, it's like that was the after school thing. You know, so when you don't feel like going just straight home, hopping straight on the bus, you literally walk to 35th just for the entertainment. Everyone would just stand around waiting on something to go down. It was crazy.
Yeah. You know, I had saw, like, I don't know if it was like a Phillips Dunbar thing, but I can tell you right now, I saw it go down in that parking lot of that White Castle one time. Like, I'm talking about going down. I'm talking about book bags flying and shit. Like, I'm like, damn. Like, is it that deep? Is it that deep right now?
But the police would build like a barricade, like right on like 33rd, or they would stop us from reaching 35th. They would be like between 33rd, 34th, or surrounding 35th, stopping us from meeting at that point. And it got to the point where Phillips actually changed their end time. Like we were getting out at like 2:30 p.m. I believe they were getting out just maybe a couple of minutes before us, maybe 15 minutes. So they would try to clear out each school before we had that time to even meet. But you know, you have to understand that a lot of our students lived on 39, so that didn't help much.
Right.
In those areas where they have to walk there anyway. So it's like, it was. Yeah. There was no getting away with that.
We would try and make it down there because, you know, with them being where they were and us being on 44th and Drexel, you know, if we heard something through the grapevine, it was like, all right, we all gonna take a trip up there just to, you know, be in the scene. Mm-hmm. And that's the way the low end was, honestly. Mm-hmm. We had a lot of high schools down there. We had Hills, we had...
You got DuSable,
Dunbar.
You got Bronzeville now.
The military,
right?
Yeah, you got them.
Right.
Yeah, they down. They down.
I don't think they were around when I was around that much. I think they were like still kind of fresh.
Okay.
So they were just like in and out kids, you know. Like they went to school, they went home. But you know,
what made things more intense that sorry to cut you off, Tom. What made things more intense that Dunbar was you had the school rivals like 39. Then you also had the buildings that were in rivalries. You had the Ickies versus the Wells, or
of course,
versus such and such. You had all of that going on as well. So those things that were probably ignite at home would just lash out on the campus. Right. So that was another thing that kept the fights and the entertainment boiling at an entertaining point.
And you know, since you mentioned the Wells, rest in peace to the Wells. Now it's a whole ass Mariano's. You know what I'm saying? It's you know, you got you know, white people walking their dogs, jogging. You know, it's a whole bank over there. They finna build some condos. Like it's a whole night and day over there. You know what I'm saying? That whole 39th and King Drive strip is just night and day.
Exactly. You know what? It's crazy because I attended Dunbar. I started in 2007. In 2007, the buildings were still standing. They had cleared them out and they were ready to be torn down, but they were still standing. By 2011, my graduating year, they had torn down the buildings and had half of what is now Oakwood Shores built up, which are like nice condos. That's most of the area. And all within the 4-year span that had happened.
Yeah, you know, that was like around a time where like the city was on a timeline. And I feel like Mayor Daley was trying to get them all down by the time he left office because the nigga knew he wanted to leave office around 2011. You know, he knew before he made the announcement he wasn't running. Let's just be real. So I think the timeline was to have every single project development down because, you know, the State Ray Gardens, they got rid of those as well over there on State Street, you know what I'm saying? Off State Street and 35th. They got rid of those as well, which are now townhomes and all of that. So I think, they was on a time schedule with that. You know what I'm saying? They was like, let's get these up out of here because we trying to, you know, start fresh with a new, all that shit. You know, but it's crazy because like, before we started recording, I had mentioned my grandmother, she lived on 33rd and Prairie. So even though I didn't grow up in the low end Bronzeville area, whatever you want to refer to it as,
your blood.
I got a little bit of it in my blood. So I was real familiar with the area myself. And it's just like to see what it is now versus back then. You know what I'm saying? Like it was a vacant lot across the street from my grandmother's apartment building all my life. Now it's like 600 condos. I mean, not condos, but townhomes over there. I'm like, damn, you know what I'm saying? Right. And then like you mentioned Hales, Tone. We can go back up to Cottage, like where that whole Walmart is at. I remember it was nothing but a vacant lot and a liquor store. Yep. You know what I'm saying? Now it's a whole Walmart. Got the condos. It's like how do y'all feel about that? Like, do y'all like the fact that the low end is being revitalized, or do y'all just see gentrification all over the place?
You want to go? Go ahead. I got something to say.
I'm half and half with that, because I want, like, okay, if the intentions of gentrification was to just simply better the neighborhood and not to kick out those who literally grew up there, who generations of families grew up throughout the Wells, throughout the Ickeys, throughout the Dearborns, and the low end people take great pride in their neighborhoods. So for me, I didn't like it because a lot of my friends who grew up there never got the return. And so that was heartbreaking because, these people had to leave an area that was so close to their heart. And that's the part you didn't like. But at the same time, come on, let's be honest, the violence was
crazy.
Yeah, very, like all the violence that you see spread about the city of Chicago now, let's be honest, a lot of that was in those areas, particularly back in the day. You saw a lot of that, in my opinion. You guys can disagree, but in my opinion, a lot of the violence that we see spread across the city happened mostly in those areas. And we can't applaud that. We can't just deny that was just that was a great thing. I mean, I don't know. That's why I said I'm half and half on that. Half because a lot of people were stripped from their childhood homes, stripped from their area that they grew up in. But at the same time, was it? I don't know.
It seems like no. These are your transparent feelings, so it's no right or wrong. But it seems like you hate it because the people who live there aren't getting the benefit. They aren't the ones that's reaping the profits of this. They aren't the ones that has their hand in the community being changed. It sounds like that's where you're coming from. Correct me if I'm wrong. Which it is frustrating. You know what I'm saying? Because redlining is real. The practice of preventing Black Americans to not only own property, but to devalue their property and to intentionally devalue their communities. That's real. Redlining was real. So these systems and laws were in place that created a lot of these problems where people who lived in their homes for generations got pushed out one way or another. So your feelings are valid there. They're valid.
So as a border child, I got a lot of different experiences. So with always being on the low end, always, all my friends were from the low end, all of their family stayed there. I do understand with the whole, it's a pain that everybody had to leave. I am just sad that the turnaround was so fast and unsaid because, me and Tamika came out right around the same time. I went into high school in 2006, came out in 2010, and I tried to come back and get a piece of that. And it was just nothing available. It seemed like so many people, like all of the grandmothers and mothers and families that own those, those townhouses, condos, stuff like that, or before they were considered condos. All of the people that own that stuff down there, they just were, I don't like to say pushed out. I think they were, it was an incentive to it. And, people who are have been up against it forever down there, like it's buildings down there. Like I had a friend whose family owned the townhouse it was a brick front townhouse, and they owned it forever. And all of a sudden they were just like bought out. And
for probably pennies on a dollar of what,
in comparison to what we have today.
Right.
And I was upset when I came back because I was like, man, don't I want to buy one of these townhouses or just a piece of property there to renovate.
Yeah.
And I tried my hardest to actually get in, and there was nothing. And my thing has always been, so as a border kid, I knew it was coming, because you would have those High Park people who, one, were tired of having to travel through that to get to downtown, and they didn't feel safe. And then two, they were tired of having to travel to downtown to get to things that they liked. And that stretch, it includes, now where we are now, that stretch includes past High Park into the 70s of Cottage, and these areas, like, they literally built someplace for these people to just come back to. Like I always said, me and my dad always said, like, yeah, they getting ready to build this for the people that were in the Orland Parks and the far out suburbs that wanted the city back.
Yep.
They wanted it back.
I think that's what it was. I really believe that it was because these people wanted their city back. They want to be, because they all work downtown. They all, frequent downtown. They all love going, shopping and all of that other stuff. And I think that's what it was. Like, it was frightening to see how fast it went.
Yeah.
It did happen fast. And go ahead.
Yeah, and I like that twist that you mentioned, redlining, because I think that's one that we should put emphasis on. Redlining in my opinion, had a lot to do with it. Because I mean, let's talk about redlining. Though there were, for me, in my opinion, there were the standards that were set by the federal government. I like to blame everything on government. I'm one of those people. But I mean, with that, what was carried out by that? You had banks that would particularly label us, predominantly Black or colored people of color per se, as risky or unfit for investments. We were denied loans, we were denied banks, we were denied everything that could have given us the chance to put money back into our neighborhoods and revamp everything and bring it back to life. Correct. So that's what makes it even more frustrating, that we also were denied the chances to keep our neighborhoods and make them better for ourselves. So that's the part that becomes frustrating, because it's like, you guys didn't even give us a chance. It was just, you pushed us out the way to make room for who you felt would value the neighborhood better.
Yeah. And that's exactly what happened, and that's why you had Black bankers like a Jesse Binger, right? A lot of people might never heard of him, but he was a Black banker that actually operated down on the low end in Bronzeville on 35th and State Street. That's where his bank was. And you had him issuing mortgages to Black Americans in that area when other white banks wouldn't do it. And this is the reality that a lot of people don't want to accept, especially not just Black people, but white people too. White people don't want to accept this, but redlining was extremely real. It was extremely real. And they would use fear tactics. They, as in bankers and, policymakers, would use fear tactics to instill fear in white residents to sell their homes and their property, right flight, and get the hell up out of there, right? And then they will start to devalue the property once more Black people moved in. And how would they devalue it? They will not give them the same public resources that white neighborhoods would get. And then they will suck them dry with food deserts and, resource deserts. They wouldn't give the schools the same textbooks and, facilities that they would give schools in white neighborhoods. And then when you have generation after generation of that, that's what brings you to the violence that's going on in the Stateway Gardens, right? The Ickies, the Whales, that's what happens. And then years later, they be like, oh, this is prime real estate. We need that. Right. we need that back. We need that back.
Those brownstone buildings between like 30th and King Drive and 35th are some of the most beautiful buildings in the city. They are amazing inside and out, and they're so slept on. And those were the buildings that our people could hardly had access to, which is sad.
Right. They held on to the ones that were worth something. All of the I mean, I know right now it is hot for people that want 3 flats, 6-unit apartments, stuff like that. But those were the rundown ones. Those are the ones that the face brick was falling apart. And I'm in construction. I know how it goes. Those brownstones, those were taken care of in a whole nother way because they were built to be like that. You know, like, and it's just, I mean, it's frightening because I have this conversation with my wife all the time. And this is just a prime example of where do we go? Like, where can people of color who want better things, and I get a lot of slack for this because as I'm transitioning from the a guy who came up with my family did okay. We did fine. They raised me and my sister well. We weren't a part of too much of we weren't a part of the violence. I don't want to say too much because that sounds bad. We weren't a part of the violence on the low end, but we were kids still at the end of the day. So we did get involved in stuff. Disclaimer. But
of course.
Yeah, I don't know where people of color can take their kid. Like, where can we take our kids? Like, we are those people now. We have to think about that. And it's scary to see what's going to happen to schools like Dunbar and King. Wow. Because now they're surrounded by white neighborhoods. Those are prominent Black schools.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
It is what it is. We got to say it like that. Like, those are staples in those communities. And what are we going to do with them? When the University of Chicago and McCormick Place area, and they're doing a huge, they're about to take over 22nd.
McCormick Place?
They're built. Yeah, McCormick Place has a huge budget getting ready to drop.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah. And then, it's so many things that, it's just pushing us further and further. And yeah, we got the South Highlands, we got the Country Club Hills, but they're still putting, Section 8 out there, and they're putting people like, I'm one of those people that's in between. I hate the fact that, white people, I don't like to say it like that because
be candid. Be candid.
Right.
It's a safe place. Ain't that what they say these days?
Okay.
It's a safe
place.
Okay,
cool. So I can talk. All right. So it's scary that white people are getting all they want, and then Black people aren't requiring what we need.
Yeah.
And that's just the way you got to put it, because it's like, I'm afraid for my kids. Because no, I don't. I had a coworker of mine, and he lived in the Morgan Park area. He lived in the Beverly area, but his son commuted to the Morgan Park area. He was at Morgan Park Academy, not our standard more Black.
Yeah, I
Park.
got you.
Right. He said that his son plays baseball. I play baseball. There's nothing wrong with that. He said that his son, before putting his hat on, do you know how like white people kind of like brush their hair back, like put their
yeah, like push their little golden boy.
Right. He said his son did it, and he said he had no idea where his son got. I mean, of course he has to know, because his son doesn't have any hair. His son doesn't have hair like he has like this normal foam curled afro. Wasn't required. Wasn't in his face. Not whatsoever. But like, these are the influences. Like, if you put them around white people, we get that type of thing. And we take our culture, we take our roots, we take all of the things that make us us. We take it from them if we put them in those types of neighborhoods. But if we put them in what neighborhoods we grew up in, and I think with the kids these days, man, like, I don't see the kids these days making it the way we made it. And it's just a miracle to see a lot of the people around me, a lot of my peers that are doing so well, and not a product of what they came from,
Not to cut you off, are you familiar?
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
sure because you say you're in construction. You're familiar
Mhm.
with the that development that's about to happen on the Michael Reese old site, right? And for those of you who don't know what Michael Reese is, that's an old hospital that used to be on the low end as well, just with Mercy, and they just
Mhm.
closed Mercy down too. But you familiar with
Mhm.
that development that's about to happen?
I've heard, more the construction side of it. I haven't
Mm-hmm.
heard more the political side of
Because
it.
the grand census is that ain't for black folk.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's like it's
They
kind of
throwing a
like
lot of money at that.
yeah, a lot of money. Like I forgot what the figures said, but it's millions that they put a
Yeah.
pump into that. And you look at the renderings, like it's and they got black people in the renderings, gotta, diversity and inclusion, right? That's what the that's the standard. But yeah, like a lot of people are saying that's gonna push us even further south,
Yeah.
because like let's just be real, gentrification is not done on the low end yet.
No.
It's not done. You know,
No.
they
And I
thought they
think
was
that's
gonna
a
push
part
black
of what
people
the high
out.
schools are.
Yeah. They thought they was gonna push us out even quicker than what it's taking. So they're like, oh, we
Right.
got to do a little bit more. That's what the consensus is that a lot of people believe.
Yeah. I wanted to mention how I feel like during my times in Dunbar, I started to see how Dunbar was kind of sort of benefiting from that beginning of gentrification at the time. And I only say this because I remember there was a time up to my last year, they did a shakeup. Now schools were being shut down left and right. I believe Diet was like number one on the list to be shut down next. And you had Dusabu that had went through a major change. They were doing some stuff around schools. But I believe because Dunbar was that school that was like right there in the middle of the transition, that they had to keep some sort of school open as the neighborhood high school,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I started to see some sort of reform in the school. We had got a new principal. Her name was Miss Covington. And Miss Covington came from her old school, and she brought, I want to say, 50 plus students with her that had GPAs of 3.0s or better.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, of course, now she's bringing on this this new thing where we're seeing it in hiding in the GPA, in the academic and the scholastics overall of the school. And then also we were a big fighting school. By my senior year, I could say it was getting pretty boring because all of the troublemakers who we loved that entertained us so much were being kicked out left and right. There were no more 10-day suspensions like they used to do. It was one fight, you're done, you're kicked out, you're sent to what they would call alternative school, which was over on state somewhere, 29th and state.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it. So you start to see like how instead of them threatening to shut us down, they started to try to put more into us and in reform school overall. So I feel like they kind of Dunbar kind of benefited from, and it's still open today from my understanding. My 10-year reunion.
It's still there. Yeah, it's still there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're still prospering. So I feel like not all schools suffered from this. Right. Some picked to be.
That's an interesting perspective because I know the junior high elementary schools, Douglas and Doolittle, they ain't CPS no more, are they? If you're familiar.
Sure. That's a good question.
I know Doolittle isn't. Well, I don't want to go on record if I ain't 100%, but I'm certain that Doolittle isn't, and I feel like Douglas isn't either. Down there on 33rd and King, or what is it, 33rd and Giles or something like that.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like they. Yeah, I feel like those ain't CPS no more either. But so it's kind of like they was getting rid of the feeder schools, in a sense, and it's like, but that's an interesting perspective though, especially because you're a student. Somebody like me on the outside wouldn't know. Somebody like me wouldn't know that. Albert, you got something to say about that?
Well, yeah. So, what's good, everyone? So I have a little bit different perspective from how everyone else was coming, and it's almost like the complete opposite. So now I do live in Bronzeville, but I grew up in the south suburbs, and growing up in the south suburbs, when they got to a certain point, it seemed like all of the city kids were moving out to the south suburbs, and which today a lot of them still are. Hell, some of the friends that I've met, as an adult now, that grew up going to Dunbar and grew up, Diet, all these other schools. Now they're talking about, well, I'm moving out to Lansing, bro. I'm moving out here, and I'm like, bro, I would never move out there. Like, I will never ever move out to the burbs. So it's like almost like the complete opposite of what some of you guys are talking about. And the gentleman made a point earlier. What was he saying? He was saying something about so I was also thinking, and just one of my points was, I almost feel like are they really taking these neighborhoods away from us, or are we kind of giving it away?
Yeah.
Because I feel like, a lot of the times, yes, I will absolutely say yes. The housing market is crazy. I want to move to Texas every week, right? But I also know it's like, if I move, I'm doing what they want me to do. And the market is going to be the market, so if I'm going to go to the burbs and purchase something, or just stay in the city, Black folks can buy a $400,000 crib too. I understand we don't want to, but we can. So I don't like to do the excuse or just say like, oh, they're pushing us out. It's like, no, we make money now too. We can afford some of this stuff too, but we like to look at our money and make it make sense. And I think that's kind of, why a lot of us move out. But I think honestly, we can afford some of this stuff. Like, we just don't want to pay what we're paying. People want to grow up with, a big backyard now. People want to have, where their kids can go outside. And so maybe that's what it is. But I don't know if they're really pushing us out more so than we just want to leave and we're giving it to them.
I think that I don't know why. I guess, money in front of you looks better than money in the long run. And I think that's one of the problems that our community kind of has, is the fast money and the whatever risk it comes at, they'll take it a lot of the times. I've seen people who, like, being in High Park, I didn't know people that parents were dirty rich. Black people, parents were dirty rich, but it was the fast money that drew them into doing stuff that they weren't supposed to be doing. And I think that just really hinders our community in general. And the fact that, white people made it look good for you to be able to move out to, like you were saying, Lansing and things like that, and not have to be in these, in the tiny apartments where it was you, your cousin, your auntie, grandma's still there, all of that stuff. Like, they felt like they had an opportunity, and it's just what the face value versus what the long term was to me.
I'm not in real estate or construction or none of that, but I would just like to know how many Black developers had the opportunity, or was presented the opportunity to build 600K townhomes on a vacant lot. That's all I want to know, because them motherfuckers ain't exist when I was a kid, and now they all over the goddamn place. And I call because I'm nosy, but I like to, what I'm saying, I feel like I'm a fake investigative reporter. I called and, I was doing some research. I'm like, oh, these motherfuckers, they Italian. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, that's just how I see it. But like, so the low end as we know it, obviously, like we said, today in 2021 ain't the same as it was in 2001. It's granted ain't the same as it was in 2011. But what's some of your favorite moments as far as like the low end, like, is eating, like some of your favorite places to eat, what I'm saying, kick it, like, what, let's end it on a high note. What's some of your best moments from the low end, and how do you see the low end going in the future? You can go ahead first, ladies first.
The low end for me is where I spent most of my high school days down there, so I have like this puppy love for the low end. That was when I found my first love there.
Oh,
the first high school sweetheart, all of that.
Booze in Bronzeville.
Exactly. Ditched a couple of 7th grade lunch periods, ditched school a couple of times just to go meet someone over in the buildings. This is the only reason I'm familiar with the buildings, or the wells as it's properly named. But I can say Baba's on 39th, which unfortunately is no longer
Baba's.
standing. I think it burned down a couple of years ago.
Damn, cold world.
I know, right? Right there on 39th and King Drive. But honestly, I miss the culture overall. Like they were really unified, believe it or not. Like, I mean, they had their scruffles, but at the same time, they were real family. Like it was like meeting up in Mandrake Park, watching everyone who sitting in the park, chilling. They used to do the low end picnics. Oh, those were my favorites. The Wells picnic over in the park.
Yeah, I remember those.
Yeah, like good times. It was almost like how we used to do the Western alumni picnic, but like over in that neighborhood. So those are some of my favorite memories personally.
Okay. What about you, graduate of King? No, wait, correct me. What's the full name of the high school? Say it again.
Martin Luther King Jr. College Preparatory.
There it is.
All right. I mean, I get everything she's saying. Although we didn't have Baba's, we had Golden's. Golden's was on 43rd and Cottage. And, you know, that was an everyday walk. Like, that was literally a block away from the school. And, you know, I also like us being lake babies. Like, ditch days were crazy.
Oh, God.
Crazy. Being able to go to the lake. Everybody ditching to go to the lake all the time. Like sometimes I feel like we were like a white movie. You know how the kids, they always go out
Ferris Bueller Days Off.
Yeah, type shit, you know. So like just the atmosphere, and it was like the community knew who you were just from you being at school down there. Like it was awesome. You have, even though he was like a local, even though we did have local junkies, they knew like, oh, I was school today. Like they would ask those type of questions. Like, you know, like just from seeing you commute somewhere and seeing them in the same place for years, good and a bad thing, whatever. But it still was the fact that, you know, like she was saying, it was like a family thing. On the low end, our hands stretched far and wide. All those high schools that we just named off, we all had homies and we were all cool. I mean, yeah, we had fights, but you fight with family, you fight with friends. It happens.
Yeah. You know, I used to ride my bike, you know what I'm saying, down there, like up and down Giles, you know, Prairie, you know what I'm saying? Like I would go like as far south to like, shit, I was out here, like I was going like 39th, you know what I'm saying? I was wilding, you know, then I go to like, you know, the big park over there on 31st, you know what I'm saying? What's it, Dunbar Park or something, I guess the name of it, but I go to that part, you know, all by myself, you know what I'm saying? But I would only know the territory because I would walk around with my uncle, you know what I'm saying? But, you know, I felt so safe back then, though. That's the crazy thing about it. Like, I felt so safe as a motherfucking 10, 11-year-old kid doing all of that back then. Bro, I'm not finna be riding my bike around, you know what I'm saying? Like around the neighborhood like that as a 33, bro. I'm just not finna do it. You know, so
that's what's funny about the city, really. Like, my grandmother my grandmother lived in the Cirque all my life. She's still there to this day. And my her and my grandfather. And when I tell you I was at Grand Cross, I mean, not to take it too far out, but that was just my, you know, my experience like yours. I walk up and down the street and, you know, I'm little Kenny, you know, my grandfather, you know, everybody had a certain level of respect back then. And that's what's scary about all these communities, because we literally like were able to go where we wanted, do what we wanted, walk up and down the street without a worry. And we all saw that deteriorate in front of us, just like as we was crossing into adulthood, as we was in college, you know, away from home. Like you would hear stories like that whole situation with what is her name? The girl that was shot in Behind King.
I know what you're talking. I forgot her name.
I know her name any other time because I knew the little girl.
Oh,
But
wow.
yeah, I mean, not knew her like that, but she
No, I
was
got you.
on the flag team or whatever, and I played football, and she was there at the very beginning. Well, she was there at the very end of my career at high school, or my high school career, and I also knew the guy who was the driver. You know what I'm saying? And they went to high school together, and it wasn't an intentional thing, and it wasn't,
Are you
being on
talking about
the
the
inside of
Hadiah
that.
Pendleton?
Hadia Pendleton, yes,
Hadiah. I said
yes,
Hadiah. Hadiah. Got it.
yes,
Okay.
and people not knowing outside looking in, you know, because it still hurts our community. I mean, it hurts our community. It hurts our people. It hurt a lot of people at King, and I know a lot of people were sad about that.
Yeah.
And it was just, a true incident of young people growing up too fast.
Yeah.
Because the driver and the shooter were young too at the time, and they just grew up way too fast doing stuff like that. Like you driving around and you happen to stop and see somebody that you beefing with, and like Tamika was saying, back in our day, we go meet up on King Drive and we just scrap it out.
Exactly.
But
Old school way.
right,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, the old school
they
way.
riding around.
They ain't doing that no more.
Exactly. And that's probably one of the biggest, that was when I felt like the complete change happened, because that's when it got close to me. You don't really realize stuff until it gets close to you.
Yeah. Yep. And
And
that's
Oh, sorry. I don't think we can leave the low end story without mentioning the infamous mansion on 45th in Michigan. Well,
man,
wildest parties ever held happened. Let's not end this episode without talking about the mansion, or at least mentioning it.
Yeah,
right.
no, you're right. And there's a lot of things that we haven't mentioned on this episode, and that was kind of intentional because it will be a more specific Bronzeville episode in the near future.
Okay.
So, but that's what's up. Definitely, the mansion. Like I mentioned earlier, the Binga Bank. If we want to talk about games, we could talk about the fort that was down there. So many things in Bronzeville, so many landmarks in Bronzeville, the low end that we have yet to dive into, John H. Johnson, all that. But we gonna get to that. We gonna get to that real soon. I'm just happy that White Castle down there on 35th is still there.
It's still kicking it.
Thank the Lord. Yeah, Popeyes ain't went nowhere, man.
Slow as hell.
I don't go there no more. They slow as shit. But real quick, I want to ask Al, what made you move to the low end? So you said you grew up in the burbs. What was the allure that brought you to the low end?
My bad. I was trying to unmute this. So a couple of things. So my family always, my brother's godfather, they lived somewhere off of 46th and something. I was a kid. So, and he was 8 years old. So I don't exactly remember where they were, but I also used to go to this daycare right on 45th and Wabash, I think that is, or 45th in Michigan. I think it's 45th in Michigan.
Okay.
And when I was a shorty. And so after I graduated from high school, I went straight down to Mississippi. I went to HBCU, Russ College. But when I came back home, it was no way I wanted to stay in the burbs. Like, I'm like, I cannot do it. I just happened to run into one of my guys, and he was like, yo, I stay over here on 39th and Cottage. And then I was like, all right, I'm gonna check it out. You know what I'm saying? And that was my first time living as an adult, not on the college campus, but away from the crib. So it was a wrap. It was done. I'm like, oh, it was, yeah. I'm 15 minutes from the club? You know what I'm saying? At
the Shrine.
Yeah, man. Hey, come on, man. So, and we used to have all the parties at our crib. We used to go out, Red No 5, do this. I mean, we would go out Sunday nights, Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, and stay home Saturday night to watch The Wire. So it was just like, that's where I just fell in love with, just being close to everything. And then, I just fell in love with it. And all my people, all my guys, I started meeting. I played flag football, hooping a little bit, and I'm meeting these guys. And then
it's a lot of flag football down there. A lot of flag football on the low end.
So everybody just was cool. Everyone, and then they'll be telling me these stories, and it sounds like they were just bad as hell. But I love that shit. I was like the little cousin that had to go home on the weekend. Go home during the week, but I get to kick it with my big cousin on the week. That's how I felt. Like when I'm listening to their stories, I'm like, yo, I know I would have been in trouble like a motherfucker, and then my mom would have been like, boy, you coming home on Monday. And like, that's would have been it. But that, you know what I'm saying? So I fell in love with Bronzeville, and now I can't get enough with it. I done moved around Bronzeville from 39th to 40th. Well, 46, I almost remember every address. 3839 South Cottage. I moved to 4016 South King Drive. I moved to 346 East 46th Place between Vincennes and St. Lawrence. Okay. And now I'm on 47th.
Don't say where you at now.
Well, I'm on 47th and Champlain. You can't.
Oh, okay,
all right.
Yeah. Okay, all right.
It's a long block. It's a long block.
Oh, hey, that block is long for real. St. Lawrence, Champlain, them motherfucking blocks is long as hell. Like,
so
that should be an Olympic sport, running them blocks.
So I love it over here. So that's what it is.
If you enjoyed this podcast, I ask for two things. Number one, leave a 5-star review. And number two, pass it on to a friend who may enjoy it as well. And don't forget to subscribe to our other podcast, Mogul Motivation from True Stories Media.